was very interesting, interactive experience, I would say. Let's just hope that those working in ancient Greek sacrifice won't tend to recreate the smells of the sacrifice itself in the near future. Okay, let's move to the next lecture by Dr. Per Johan Isdahl. Sorry, my accent. Norwegian is not that great. Is currently consultant for innovative efforts in health services organizations and architecture in Norway, and now holds a work affiliation with China Academy of Medical Sciences in China. He is former director of the Regional Department for Eating Disorder at Oslo University Hospital, and his training is in social and clinical psychology. Areas of research and practice are family systems, generative team development, caring systems, design, special aspects of human life, history and mental problems, integrative psychotherapy. His lecture today is on mother's face, father's voice, emotions in transit between longing and belonging.
While they are working with the technology, I would like to say thank you very much for inviting me. And I am a comment to the last lecture, because my life has been in the therapeutic rooms of many hospitals. And for the last 15 years I've worked with a terrible sort of suffering for modern women, the anorexia nervosa. So I'm somehow a veteran in that area. So you could really use the lecture of the history of emotions when I continue my speech, because very, very good input heard from before me. So I'm very grateful for that. So I hope it's coming. And I was not really prepared to come here because you invited me, and then I have been thinking about going to Athens at all at this time of year, of course. So then I did what the psychologists usually do, is to go a long walk and start thinking about, well, what I'm going to say, because coming here is a very big thing. So here we go. And then, yeah, thanks. And then what happened was that after the long walk, I instructed myself to dream. You should dream. And to my great surprise, I'm 70 years old, and my parents, I remember them, and suddenly they came in my dream. And my father sat in a chair, and my mother was washing the dishes. Isn't that interesting? So here we go. I think, yeah. So the narrator is a very, you could say, experienced psychologist. On the other hand, okay, yeah. Do you hear me when I walk around? Okay? Yeah. Yeah, I will use that. So then, I'm a child, and I'm a baby boom 1946 person, and that has a very important, results for my life. I have lived in a country for all my life. There has been no war. That's a rare thing. So, and I also, despite of a long work with mental problems, with people suffering from psychosis and things like that, I am amazed by the wonders of life, like the researchers from Holland. So I will talk about what happened to me after the dream. Then I looked at the exhibition on the internet, and then I started to reflect on the following. For a scientifically trained and skeptical eye, many faces in Greek are speak by way of elegant forms. I like that. I had been thinking about it at all. So the mimicry is open to our identification with a state of mind, such as joy. I mean, all the interesting pictures today have really emphasized the fact that, I'd like to say that now, that if you use a modern system, a computerized system, that it's used to read faces of people in the street, to see what they're about to do, that means identification. If you use the modern computers on the Greek faces, you might even see new things, because it's anatomically so well done. This is a comment. And I also feel that it must be important to show the personal characteristics in the old Greek art of the persons that they were thinking about when they were making the art. And there is such a warmth, even in spite of drama and war and all the interesting things about politics in the old Greek society. I must say they really had an interesting time. So it moves me. And the harmony is presented in the Greek figure, and its face and head is an ideal to me, and because an ideal can remind me of a necessary utopian ideals. What could we think about the future of the human race? Because humans now meet each other on such an enormous scale. It's fantastic to see how many foreigners there were in Beijing. I mean, I was expecting, there was a conference, and I was expecting to see 19% Chinese. There are 30% people from other countries in Asia. So the intercourse in the world is exploding. And then, of course, in the political sphere, it comes up to the question of the moral status of the person, the individual. And I usually work with individuals. And I visited this museum with my daughter, and she is a rather interesting figure. And because she's very young and she's very into the modern Asian, figure, lots of dance and things. And she said, they are naked, they are hefty, they are cool, naked, sexy, and it doesn't show. You have to look at them to see the emotions. So, and it seems to me that there is something about the Greek figures, the Greek statues, that's interesting for a modern eye like mine. That it is what could I say? It's such a decency about them, a decency that is all gone, to my mind. And it's strange that I choose this way. But let me go back to the to the fact that the beginning, the starting of my work with this lecture was, I remember the physical culture of my parents. I will move on to that. And I think that the way I relate to the world, the way I relate to my work, or how I live my life, is deeply shaped by the physical culture of my parents. The way I, for instance, move in the streets in Athens, the way I look at nature is really reinforced by the way they live their life. And the interesting thing is that when I look at the sculptures, the movement stops. And when the movement stops, like in one of the Greek statues, it is as if I continue the movement. And that is amazing how they manage to make it interesting to relate to a movement that stops. And not a sound is heard other than in my imagination. And that is also a bit interesting. You stand in a museum and you can make a sound yourself, like a cry, or like a sigh, or like a shout. It's very, if you open up to these statues, it is as if you are inspired to continue the movement. And that's, for the first time, I was influenced by a sculpture in that way. And I think that's could be explained or not. It is an interesting experience. Maybe it's because it's such a dignified attitude in these sculptures. Okay, so the Aristotelian world, and you can see that when I relate to all the old art, somehow compared to the modern technology of studying faces, they seem static, but they show traits and capacities all the same. I am the beholder of it. I am the one who are creating the responses to this art. So I can feel that there must be passionate and vibrating emotions. It comes true. And the old wisdom talks to me when I look at the old Greek art. The old wisdom. The question is, can it be said that it's still a wisdom that's relevant for me? It was upon that which struck the eye and what I look at. We seek the portrait and find a face like divided in 7 areas, like in the old studies of the face. It might give a sense of harmony. It might foster feeling, a longing for reconciliation, and a wish and hope to relate to the beautiful. And after so many years working with contemporary people's troubles and worries and fear of being ugly, because they think if they don't look beautiful enough, they will be not worth anything. So the struggle for a kind of, or longing for a kind of authenticity on the personal level is going on all the time across the lifespan. My oldest patient, in my private practice, is 80 years old, and she's afraid of dying. Isn't it interesting? Think about that. You don't know. And she still thinks and she struggles how to make her life worthwhile living. So it's the light cast upon by the eyes of the others. The naked face is without protection and has a peace that cannot be resisted. We find everlasting variations of the enigma of the face. And the face is colored, like in many cultures. You can see the face. In my country, or in my background, that is a strange provocation. You like to see, you want to see, you want to understand a naked face. And of course, I will not go into it, but there is a German philosopher and psychiatrist, Karl Jaspers, who wrote a fantastic, interesting book. And I disagree mostly with all what he says about how therapy should be done. It's 1913. And it's about that you are somehow overwhelmed when seeing a face. You are overwhelmed by its communicative capacity, because you are humans, both of you. And then you think that the chin, the cheek, the way the person talks and moves tells you about who they are. And you think, oh no, I know about him, I know about her, and I think I could predict how it will be to be together and things like that. But it's relative. Suddenly you understand that the highbrow is not a sign of intelligence, but your new lover is a stupid asshole. So how about it? And I will go further on. The old wisdom, because it's a wisdom based on common experience, how people relate to each other. You look alike, but you are deeply different. And I was very interested in the historical research, because in the therapy room, what you meet there is an amazing amount of thoughts for me of how different people are, even when they come from the same background. The human scale of difference is fantastic. And of course, it's a very privatized room somehow. When you sit with them and you work with people for many years, you can do that. And how change is created. And to me, it is one of the most interesting things is how a person in their life can use the society we have for individual change if they really find their own way. You can have many models, but people find their own way. And many times they find their own way without really having words for it. So one patient can say, the words for what I am today does not exist, because they see that they have changed. Let me read to you. I carry my ancestors' emotional aspirations and try to avoid the nostalgia of lost generations. It's a very tempting thing to look back. So I try to look forward. What would my life be ahead? And longing is yearning, desire. It could also be a wishful thinking of being a child again and having living parents, or living in a house filled with things of the past. So if we do family therapy, like looking at the generations that has gone, see how the family lives today, how their different environments have shaped them, shaped the parents. And it might be somehow a hope that if you go back, you might somehow find something that's of use for you today. Like things, like you have inherited things, like pictures, etc., etc. But the single individual is somehow, I feel strongly, overwhelmed by the fact that you can reach the whole world on the internet. To me, it seems that the constant possibility of actually being in cyberspace changes people dramatically. In the fact that they avoid solving their present problems in practice. So they look at they look at the long series, they live somehow almost 24 hours away from themselves or being on the internet. I think that is one of the most interesting things for the clinicians like me concerning emotion, is that if some new technique of destroying your life is developed and put on internet, it's known around the world within 36 hours. Think about it. It's a new way of starving yourself. And then, hello guys, follow me. This is my new, and I went down 10 kilos in 15 seconds. Look. And it's amazing stuff too. So, but personally, I could say, okay, yes, it goes for me too as a therapist. I resemble those long ago, and do not know it actually. How do I resemble people when there are no witnesses? I know I did belong to a family. I know I did belong to a local place. I know I did belong to somewhere. I did belong to a language culture. But it's all gone. I have to seek somewhere else for my life. And of course, persons and nations or cultures share common historic experiences. And the diaspora is almost always present by choice or by political circumstance. Millions struggle with mixed identities and aspirations. So, to me, the speed of diaspora, the speed try to find a decent way of life is overwhelming to me. You know, it seems like listening to the historian, the detailed knowledge you have in Greece about Greek history, the persons that lived before. It's overwhelming, you know. But at the same time, the cultures around the world do not have that written culture because of the wars and everything. So how are they going to find that kind of identity in a local community or in a small city-state like in Greece? You know, very soon 75% of people on the earth will live in big cities. You know. And I must tell you that it's such an experience to walk or travel around on the subway in Beijing. There are 20 million people, and see how they use their Sunday because they have the free time. How a city like that, on the street life in that city is fantastic. So I'm so optimistic that people can find each other and develop new cultures in these big cities. So I'd like to mention that. As if then there are phases and personal collective histories. And there's such a painful struggle between belonging and longing for somehow a future past. Like the Japanese living in USA, they are longing for a collective past and try to build a new way of living. As if things that was long ago should be of value for the next and future generations. But it's all gone. And it's fantastic that you try to recreate something that is gone. And it's so overwhelming, and became so a good mood when I listened that I could smell. And I would like to make when I come home, I would like a historical smell of the farms that my family come from. And of course, it will be the smell of pigs and cows from today. And then if I say to, you know, the young folks, this is how it smelled in the farm in the 1850s, and they, of course, I'm lying, but they will believe it, you know, because the cows smelled the same that time. So I like that. Okay. So what I wanted to share with you, that when you live in such a huge city, one of the most testing things is to know how to relate to unknown faces. You know, you remember a face, and even so to combine faces and names, and at the same time also remember people's phone numbers. You know, the internet. So to get in touch, to keep in touch, to meet new people is a fantastic challenge, I think, in this kind of environment. But at the same time, we have selfies. How many like selfies here? Do you like that? Enjoy the selfie? No. Yeah. So I think I have started to, you know. Yeah. It's crazy stuff, huh? But it's a way of developing your identity. You know, I should have a selfie with me from Acropolis, or a selfie from me in Beijing. You know, it's interesting. The technology, of course, makes it possible. So we belong to ourselves by looking at the mirror image. Yeah. So to me then, in these long walks, preparing what I wanted to share with you, is that the passport came up as the most dramatic idea of all my ideas. So the struggle for the face, actually globally, to me is concentrated around the passport. If it's not accepted at Heathrow or wherever, you are in deep shit, as they would say in England, because you know name and the history that the authorities, the state authorities, tell you. So I'm so glad that nobody, or maybe on the other hand, if somebody hackers came into the international passport system, what the hell they would create if they changed the name on each passport. That's a very, very tempting thought. So our society is very vulnerable. But my personal and private representation is as seen by the systems of public control. And this is extremely interesting for me as a social psychologist. It's changed in the machinery. I sit there, I'm going to Christmas shopping. And me and my wife is having a good time, but the passport is accepted, hopefully. And the bodily data transmitted to be evaluated according to the needs of the personal registration accepted as a truthful identity. And in the extreme, one can say that with a passport you do not exist. Is that true? It's a theory, a statement, a wondering. Because when the person in front of me, last time, trying to get in, early in the morning, 5:40, at Heathrow, and the person in front of me did not get into England, UK, taking aside. And the young lady who was evaluating his passport and his documentations, she looked so sad because this young woman, she was taken aside. What would be her fate? And then I stood there, and then my wife stood there, my daughter stood there, and that was nothing. But maybe that person's life was changed forever because she was not accepted into United Kingdom. So a life in transit. My life is not that much in transit, but many young people's life is in transit around the world. And they struggle to develop a kind of different identities in order to have a good life. So, thinking about faces and pictures and our human history, let the passport picture, the passport, give you possibilities to engage in one's life in chosen circumstances. The acceptance by foreign authorities can support the person in the struggle to develop an authentic life in transit between longing and belonging. And I hope you understand that that is somehow an area where a lot of people try to find their way. Like going home, like the Chinese factory workers who make your shoes and all our clothes have an identity as factory workers. They are women. They learn English and they learn how to use computers, and they go home to their village. They send money home to their parents, and somehow it seems that life could be okay for them, but they are trapped because many times, well, as the stories goes, the family, the mother and father, they use the money for the brother's marriage and for their own building or the building in your home and things. So the changes around the world are very complicated if you take as a starting point an individual life, because there's so much hopefulness in the dramatic global changes. Let me give another idea to you. The struggle with separation after deep attachment, like in families, have been between people who love each other. I use the word lederi, how to meet the sorrow of life, a sorrow, a grieving that everybody, each and every of us would meet somehow, somewhere. How is this grieving, this sorrow, this struggle with separation? How is it creating stories? Of course, in films, yes. In novels, yes. This is a global emotional drama at all ages and all phases of life. It goes on all the time. And the interesting thing to me, when they sit in my office, and they can say, yes, I Skype with my old friends. Yes, I can talk to them, when I will, when I want. But I will not be able to live together. We will not be able to be together as before, because life has changed dramatically. And then it seemed to me that the struggle with grieving was different before. Then you knew that you would not be able to meet them again, and then you had to really solve the problem. But the constant possibility of meeting in cyberspace creates a continuous hurt, because if it's like that for political reasons, you will not actually meet in person. So you are continuously re-traumatized by the technology. And how do you solve this? Switch off the computer? No, you cannot. So, and then I will just talk a bit about how many? 3-4 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah. Talk about the psychology simulators. So in the area of human communication, the science of face perception is also the study of the organ of communication. And I like it a lot, because they have done research on this. There were some psychology students who thought, face, but we have ears. So they did research on, could you please draw your ears? How do your ears look like? We do not know. If the task was here in the workshop, how would you draw your ears? And they would probably be different, but you could draw your nose, couldn't you? Or because you don't like it, so you know about it. So it's interesting that the face as an organ of communication is built up so that you, in very, very short time, will be able to make a decision. Woman, what age, what kind of person is this? So that, to me, is the social psychology study of the first meeting. And I cannot go into that now. It's fascinating. So you should look on the internet and read about how we make our minds about people we meet in such a short time, for dramatic consequences, because maybe people who meet for the first time, after a month they might be married, things happen. So we'd like that to see. But the database research has scoring programs used in various fields such as surveillance, training for personnel, diagnosis, by using apps for treatment, and the system is used to develop data games. So my field then, psychology, as a science, has really tried to understand human feelings and human communication by use of modern methods. So they study the brain of the beholder, neuroscience of face perception, messages from the face, grip reading, gaze, expression, whose face is it, how individual faces are recognized, etc., etc. And of course the science of vision and light and physical differences, and the mating game, and what is beautiful or not, is of course just a part of the whole research. And one wonders, if you continuously observe and record a human face, is it possible, by looking at the face, to understand the intentions of that person? Is it possible to predict? If you know something about the situation, yes. But is that really the way to understand motivations? So, and of course, it's tempting to remind you that if you are streetwise in life, you know that if you are charmed by a person, you should stop a bit, and then you could say to yourself, is this really the whole story? You know? And maybe it's interesting if you look at what people do and say, instead of being charmed by their appearances. It could be a good story. It could be a wise thing, actually, to remember. It's a bit cynical, and Machiavelli wrote about it. So, what do psychologists and researchers do when they study the face and compare it with the old wisdom? Can we see if people are lying? You know, do we observe embarrassment? The meaning of different smiles? Can a face tell about mental disorder and suicidal wishes? In what ways do facial patterns in one person influence the others, and how true are they? So that's the research program that can give you some enlightenment about the complications or complexities of human interaction. So back to life in transit. So the global circulation of people, information and goods influences our understanding of our spaces for living, belonging and identity. Indeed, our capacity to relate in meaningful ways. The intensity of the emotions in current human drama makes the subject of the exhibition deeply relevant for me. And I'd like to go back to one final point, is that I think that the somehow old expression, passion, is more relevant in my work and in my practice than emotions. Simply because passions last a long time and are complex affective states. Indeed, they are filled with short-term emotions, strong emotions, yes. And passions and emotion are linked. They are natural kinds of experiences. We see in the art all the ethical and moral dramas of the human face. But I like so to say that if you work like me with people, like with young people, who have really met the paradoxes of modern life and continue to find their solutions like eating disorder or value, they are very passionate because they sense that their struggle might lead to another kind of authentic life in the end. So maybe we should have a discussion about the value of the concept of passion.